Hello, math students. I hope by the end of this video you can say I can add two integers with different signs. So, if we're given two integers with different signs and we're adding them together. So, for example, we have -3 plus +7. Let's look at this on a number line, see what's going on. So we've got -3 to start with. So that is moving to the left. So let's move to the left 1, 2, 3 places. So let's draw our arrow. So we're at -3. Okay, and this arrow is 3 units long. Now we are adding 7 to it. So now we're adding 7 to it. So let's move 7 to the right. So now we're going to move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And our question is, where do we end up? Let's draw our arrow here. Well, we can see we end up at 1, 2, 3, 4. We end up at 4. So our answer is going to be equal to 4. However, we can do this without the number line right here. So these arrows are pointing in different directions. They are not going in the same direction. -3 is moving this way. +7 is moving this way. So because they're moving in different directions, okay, we can find the difference of their absolute values. We know that this one has an absolute value of 7, and this one has an absolute value of 3. So we can find the difference of their absolute values. In other words, we can subtract them from each other. We can go 7 minus 3 equals 4. So that is how we got our answer of 4, right? You can take the distance of this arrow minus the distance of this smaller arrow, and that'll give you your answer. So in this instance, our answer is positive because the positive number that we're adding had a greater absolute value. So let's change this problem up just slightly. So let's say we're to have 3 plus -7. Okay, different. Now instead of the negative being the 3, the negative is the 7. So let's look at this number on the number line, or this expression on the number line. Okay, so we're going to start moving 3 to the right. So 3 in the positive direction. So we got 1, 2, and 3. So we know the absolute value of this, the distance of this arrow, or the absolute value from 0 to 3 is 3. And now we're adding -7. So usually we think of adding as moving to the right, but because we're adding a negative number, we are actually moving to the left. So let's move to the left 7 units. We're adding -7. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So where do we end up at? Let's draw our arrow quick here. You know, this arrow is 7, has a distance of 7. We end up 4 to the left of 0. So 1, 2, 3, 4. We end up at -4. So our answer here is going to be -4. And look at how do these two differ. This one we got a positive answer. This one we got a negative answer. Well, that's because the absolute value of -7 is greater than the absolute value of 3. So the number with the greater absolute value, you keep that sign. So the negative number had a greater absolute value, or in other words, the negative number had the longer arrow. If you're thinking on a number line, we move further to the left than we did to the right, so we have a negative answer. Similarly, with this first example, our positive number had a greater absolute value. So we ended up with a positive answer. Okay, so whenever we're adding two integers with different signs, look at the two numbers' absolute values. Whichever number has a greater absolute value, you keep that sign, and you subtract. You find the difference between their absolute values, and that's going to be your answer. So let's go with just another quick example here. So let's go with 2 plus -5. Okay, so our absolute value of 2 is 2. Our absolute value of -5 is 5. So -5 has a greater absolute value. So we know our answer is going to be negative. And now we find the difference between their absolute values, which is 5 minus 2. End up getting 3. So our answer is going to be -3. Similarly, if we had -2, plus positive 5. Now let's look at their absolute values. Absolute value of negative 2 is positive 2. Absolute value of positive 5 is 5. So our positive number has a greater absolute value. So we're going to get a positive answer. And we take 5 minus 2, and we would get 3, and we would get a positive answer. That is it on our video on adding two integers with different signs. I hope by now you can say I can add two integers with different signs.